we don't know why he turned to atheism. These poems that he wrote that were pans to Mephistopheles, is that after he becomes an atheist?
No, he's writing, so the first one was 1837, wrote another in 1841. He wrote a bunch of them.
Right.
He did just a chilling play called Ulanem.
Yes.
Oulanem. And people that are watching this, if they now type into their computer Ulanem, even in Google, it'll pop up. Play by Karl Marx.
Yeah.
It even has a Wikipedia entry. And let me warn people, you might not want to do this, but if you click the images button, you will see, there's some satanic stuff up there from like, not heavy metal, but like black metal groups. So Ulanem is an anagram for Emmanuel or Emmanuello.
Right.
So Marx takes Emmanuel, which is the name given to Christ, or Manuelo, and he flips it into this anagram called Ulanem. And it's this chilling play. The main character is Lucindo, Lucindo. And you just can't believe what you're reading with this play. Mm-hmm. So that was written later in the 1840s. So really the prime of his writing, including the decade when he wrote the Communist Manifesto, is also the same decade when he was writing these poems.
And plays.
And throughout his life, his kids and others would say, he had a favorite line always from Mephistopheles. Everything that exists deserves to perish. So that remains a part of him throughout his life. His son, Edgar, has a letter where he addresses his father as my dear devil, which I don't know. Maybe it's playful. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although I would never, call my dad my dear devil. Mm. His wife called him my wicked knave. I quote Henrik Heinzen, referring to him as a goblin who tried to take me under his spell. Other cases of where he's using that kind of language. When Engels first met him, he describes him as this dark man from Trier, who hops and leaps and springs on his heels. The monster of 10,000 devils, he describes him. Mm. And the letter from his father is, which was written in 1837, a year before his father died. So his father writes to him, March 2nd, 1837. Karl, at times my heart delights in thinking of you and your fortune, and yet at times I cannot rid myself of ideas which arouse in me sad forebodings and fear when I am struck as if by lightning by the thought, is your heart in accord with your head, your talents? Has it room for the earthly but gentler sediments which in this vale of sorrow, it's a beautiful letter in many ways, are essentially consoling for a man of feeling? And then this question from the father of Karl Marx to his at this point, 18-year-old son. And since that heart, Karl, is obviously animated and governed by a demon, not granted to all men, is that demon heavenly or Faustian? Mm. Will you ever, and that is not the least painful doubt of my heart, will you ever be capable of truly human domestic happiness? And this doubt has no less tortured me since I have come to love a certain person like my own child, will you ever be capable of imparting happiness to those immediately around you? By the way, the answer was no, right?
Well,
but that
obviously
phrase,
the father had intimations of that.
Yeah, and since that heart is obviously animated and governed by a demon not granted to all men, is that demon heavenly or Faustian? That's his dad.
Yeah.
And there's only so many of those things, I think, that a sympathetic Marxist or Marxist biographer can shrug off. I mean, there's just so many statements like that from him and people about him and people who knew him and loved ones and a wife, a son, a best friend from Engels, and then the different writings. Whew.
Okay, so let's attack this.
Now, was he a Satanist, right?
Well,
that is a whole different thing that I can't personally answer.
Well, it seems not unreasonable to presuppose that he was a devotee of the Mephistophelian ethos.
Yeah, I think that's
right. So
really
the question is, what constitutes a Satanist? Well, someone who generates a murderous doctrine, that raises questions. I mean, dead serious about that. Like
right.
The most murderous doctrine ever promoted in the roughly Judeo-Christian context by a large margin. So I would say it's incumbent on those who would defend him to describe why we wouldn't just assume that. But the part of the reason that I was so interested in talking to you was because I felt that what you documented in your book was extraordinarily telling from the psychological perspective, because I know how these things work. And it is not something that can be overlooked, that was his favorite quote.
Right.
I mean, especially not when you understand Goethe's centrality in the German intellectual tradition. That's like having a favorite quote from Shakespeare, right? And it's not any old quote. It's the central credo of Mephistopheles. So that's extraordinarily telling. Now, I do have another.
Can I give you a...
Yes.
So Robert Paine, the very serious academic, no right-winger, British man of letters, the guy who really broke this first in his 1968 biography of Marx, all right? His chapter where he talks about this stuff is called The Demons in his Marx biography. Now, he wrote this, and I'm not saying that I endorse this. As an academic, I can't say if this is correct. There were times when Marx seemed to be possessed by demons. That's what Paine wrote. And now this I would at least more endorse. Marx had the devil's view of the world and the devil's malignity. Sometimes he seemed to know that he was accomplishing works of evil. I think that gets closer to it. Now, Pastor Richard Wurmbrand, who wrote the famous book Tortured for Christ, and was tortured for Christ in Romanian prisons by communist captors who were shouting, "I am the devil," while they were torturing him. He did a book called Marx and Satan. He's convinced that Marx was a Satanist and did some things ritualistically that it might have even been satanic. But I can't say that. I can't endorse that.
But you see evidence of that in his play.
I've never seen...
In terms of at least his fantasies.
That's right. That's right. In fact, Paine even goes so far as to say, Vladimir Lenin, right? There's a statement from Lenin which said, when I was a teen, I broke from all religion. I took the cross from my neck and I threw it in the rubbish bin. And Paine has a quote where, not Paine, Richard Wurmbrand, where I think he believes that Lenin even stomped on it. He says, well, that's a satanic ritual. I don't know. I don't know that it is or not. But there's another case of Lenin who at least did the work of the devil. I mean, Lenin had, according to Robert Conquest, W.H. Chamberlain, the first historian of the Russian Revolution, 500,000 people were killed from 1917 to 1923 under Lenin, not even including the Russian Civil War. If that's not the devil's work, I don't know what the hell is, right? But I think what Paine said in the latter quote, the devil's view of the world, the devil's malignity, and at the very least, this identification with kind of devilish-like destruction, right? Tearing everything down, rebelling against the world, everything that exists deserves to perish. That at least, and then the ideology that he created that just happened to be responsible for the deaths of over 100 million people in the 20th century, more than World War I and World War II combined. So that ideology was pretty hellacious.
To say the least. Okay, so, and I think it's very naive not to assume that the events that we described in Marx's life are not connected, right?
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
And that his economic polemics were somehow independent of his poetic imagination. It's like, obviously they weren't, because they wouldn't have had that motivational force. So they were calling on dark forces, obviously. So, because otherwise they wouldn't have compelled people in that manner, especially not toward that sort of immense sadistic murderousness and utter destructiveness.
And of course, get to the hatred of God, which all the communists did. So all the communists thereafter seek to ban religion.
Right. Atheists.
That's right.
They're not exactly atheists because they're trying to stomp something out.
That's right. It's not
a neutrality.
That's right. It's not a neutrality toward religion. It's not irreligion. It's not separation of church and state. It is militant, aggressive atheism. Trotsky and Lenin create the League of the Militant Godless.
Right.
They ban religion. They have the Moscow church trials. They blow up churches. They jail priests, right? The Solzhenitsyn writes in the Gulag Archipelago, they put nuns in special sections of the Gulag with prostitutes.
Yes, right.
Deem them whores to Christ.
Absolutely.
Lenin said, all worship of a divinity is a necrophilia. There is nothing more abominable abominable than religion.
Yeah.
So they don't just try to stop religion. They want Pol Pot, the Buddhist monks in Cambodia, to renounce their vows, to marry. Yeah. It's not enough for them to be quiet. And so after 4 years... I don't know how you can separate
a militantly anti-religious atheism from, especially, say, within a Christian context, from something approximating satanic ideology. Because I don't see how conceptually that separation is possible. It's one thing to be atheist in the manner that leaves people to go to hell in a handbasket in their own way, but to be actually an enemy of the religious enterprise, that's a whole different thing.
It is.
So, and that obviously Marx and the communists were obviously that, clearly, obviously.
And Satan might say, I don't care if you believe in me or not, you're doing my work, man. I mean, you're shutting down churches, blowing up churches.
That also touches on the issue of what it means to believe, right? And I mean, you could imagine someone comparatively harmless who toys with ritualistic satanic activities in a sort of dramatic manner. And then you could imagine someone who tortures nuns and priests and burns down churches, but forgoes any technical affiliation with Satan.
Right.
I would say that the latter is the Satanist in a much deeper sense than the former.
That's
Not that what the former is doing is excusable.
Yeah, or at least satanic.
Yes, right. But to do what the communists did to the religious enterprise is evidence of something far more militant than a mere atheism.